Okay, is everyone able to hear me? Can folks on the chat, can everyone hear us?
I can hear you.
Yes. Yep, hear you fine.
Okay, great. So, hello everybody. Here we go. Press *1 to start the broadcast. All right, how do I do that? And these are on hold. Just want to start it.
Hey, Mother.
Why are they all? Guys, I'm really sorry. For some reason, this is being really weird. Because it should say the broadcast. So, what is going on with here? Oh God. Why is this not just doing its usual thing? Give me a minute here. Good afternoon, everybody. Is anyone able to hear me? Can we go to the chat? Can someone type in the chat if you're able to hear us? Want to make sure that everyone's on the same page before we get started here.
Yes.
Why is this not working? Okay, so why is this not starting? I can't get the attendees to get off hold. Guys, I'm really sorry. I cannot get the system to get everybody off hold, and so we can actually get this started.
Hey, Sam.
Hey, Sam.
Yeah.
Do we have an option for a message out to the attendees through the chat? Because I can type a message out. Just.
Hey, Sam. It's Rob Harmon.
Hey.
I just emailed you a link to a site that apparently addresses this issue of getting them out of the lobby. I mean, out of the hold and into the lobby.
Okay.
So if those directions, I've never done this before.
This usually has never been this is like the first time this has ever been an issue, and of course it happens while I'm like working from home.
Sure, of course. So I don't know if those instructions will help you or not. I don't really use WebEx much, so.
No, this might be right. No, it doesn't help. It says press *1, and I don't know how to. I'm trying to. How the heck do I do that? Because I don't, unless I can do it through my phone. Maybe that's what it's asking. Hello, everybody. Sorry so much for the delay, and thanks for your patience here. Really appreciate it. We just had some technical difficulties getting the system to work right, but everything's all sorted now, so we're all set. So thank you so much for staying on the line here with us and being a little flexible here. Working from home definitely changes things up a little bit. So anyway, my name is Sam Kramer. I'm the Financing Program Director for NASEO. Glad you can all make it to the call. Really looking forward to this discussion. Since we are running a little behind, I will quickly turn things over to our co-chairs, Dan and Jeff, to get things going. And now we can, and then we'll get started. All right, Dan and Jeff, are you there?
I'm here, Sam. Can you hear me?
Great. Yep, we can hear you. Let's get things going.
All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dan Farrell. I'm with the Virginia State Energy Office, Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. I want to welcome you to our quarterly NASEO Financing Committee call. In terms of housekeeping, we have the agenda and the materials for the call available through NASEO's Financing Committee page, which is at naseo.org/committee-financing. So if you need any of the documents or would like to access those now, you can go there and find them. Today's agenda, we are going to be talking about some new financing models that are coming into the energy efficiency space. I'm not going to read everything here in my script in the interest of time, but there are some interesting new financing and program models coming online. We have a great lineup of speakers today, and in the interest of time, I'm going to pass it over to my co-chair, Jeff Pitkin with NYSERDA, to introduce our speakers and get the ball rolling for us. Jeff?
Thanks, Dan, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all are doing well, and that all of you and your families and folks in your organizations are doing well as well in these unprecedented times. I too am going to shorten the script here. So we have 3 speakers today. Each of them are going to speak for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then we'll open up the line for any questions. If you have questions, if you could please enter them into the chat function on your sidebar, that would be great. Sam will be monitoring that throughout the discussion, and we'll tee those up. So we'll just kind of roll from one presenter to the other. So we have 3 speakers today, and they are Robert Johnson, Senior Vice President with Hannon Armstrong, Jesse Chavone, Vice President with New Markets for Spark Fund, and Robert Harmon, Executive Director with the Meets Accelerator Coalition. So now I'm going to turn it over to Robert, who's our first speaker. Robert, take it away.
Okay, just let me transfer the slides over and get things going here. Great, thanks, Jeff, appreciate it. Welcome everybody, and first of all, thank you for taking time out of your busy day against the backdrop of the national health crisis. So many people are not thinking about behind the meter energy efficiency solutions, but let's talk about that today from our perspective. Regarding Hannon Armstrong, many people don't know who we are, so I figured I'd take a minute and just explain who we are and what we do. Publicly traded company since April of 2013, listed on New York Stock Exchange. We are the first publicly traded company dedicated solely to investments in climate change solutions. So we have a pretty unique platform on which we invest in various solutions. We've been fairly successful at doing so, investing over $1 billion annually for the past 5 years running. We have about $2 billion of assets on our balance sheet and approximately $6 billion of assets under management. We do this in 3 different business lines. Behind the meter, which includes energy efficiency, distributed generation, and storage. That's the majority of what we're going to be talking about today here in this world of efficiency or energy as a service. Second market is grid connected. We have a fairly sizable solar land business. We own about 23,000 acres across the nation. And onshore wind, we have an interest in some 2+ gigawatts of wind energy across the nation. And then finally, sustainable infrastructure. So you think about clean water, restoration activities with MS4 projects and the like. These all get to the idea of climate change and how we're all taking a holistic view in all of these aspects of this environmental challenge that we're under. To give you an idea of some of the client solutions, we have contracts that span each of the client segments that I have listed here, but I want to point out a couple of things for you that may be of interest. Over to the right, you notice under the state and local, there's public-private partnerships. And one that I'd like to highlight that we recently announced was the $115 million preferred equity investment we made in the University of Iowa concession agreement alongside NG and Meridian. a fairly unique program, one that's mirrored somewhat off of the Ohio State University program. And from an energy as a service perspective, it is a fairly sizable, very complex and comprehensive program that entails energy, water, and other aspects of the energy requirements on the University of Iowa campus. Second, I want to go back over to commercial industrial and just point out that from an energy as a service or energy management as a service, we've worked with various companies, including SparkFund and GridPoint, for these types of projects and provided funding for them. So we have a variety of ways to help the customers, and I'll leave it there. As I was challenged with this thought process, I wanted to start to think about what is energy as a service, and Green Tech Capital kind of said it most succinctly in some respects, in that this is really a C&I customer, commercial industrial customer type of application. It's one that's been used historically in many other MUSH and public sector aspects, but now it's really taking hold in the commercial industrial sector. And I think you'll hear more from Jesse about that in a minute. Next, I looked at, I'm a board member of the National Association of Energy Services Companies, and on a biannual basis, we do a study with Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. So I look back at what has gone on with the private sector in particular as it relates to energy efficiency and projects that have been undertaken. And in their latest study, here it shows under the two bars the private sector in relation to other sectors in terms of how much activity has happened in these sectors. As you can see, the projects generally are smaller with the private sector, although there's an interesting size count. The size of each project is generally smaller. And you'd have to say that the public sector customers have used the Guaranteed Energy Savings Performance Contract, or GESPC, to accomplish the energy upgrades, and they've done that for two reasons, in my opinion. One, it's been driven by need, and two, it's been facilitated by legislation. So then the question becomes, what do we do here from a policy standpoint to help us with these various aspects of a energy as a service type of application, both in public and private sector? So further, I went through this thought process of, well, what are some of the definitions of energy as a service? And it turns out that in Googling that, I came up with a variety of different definitions, as a matter of fact. So Navigant had an interesting one that was more comprehensive in nature, saying that energy as a service is a comprehensive bundle of products and services that you offer to a customer, that then the customer gets the benefit of those services over some period of time. ACEEE, if you notice the bold item there, there it was the energy as a service models looking at the private sector and commercial buildings, and how can they, the private sector, take advantage of these contracts to then repair, upgrade, and do what they need to do with, even though they have limited capital. And then finally, resources for the future, they go right to the heart of the matter and says energy as a service models usually take the form of a subscription type agreement. And Jesse's going to talk about that in just a second. So I thought it was instructive to see these and give you some kind of landscape on what is happening with the energy as a service model. I will say that there are many definitions. I used to say, for example, that in microgrids, if I put 10 people in the room and asked them what the definition of a microgrid was, I would get 12 different answers. We may say the same thing about energy as a service today, but I believe webinars like this and other aspects are helping everyone come to the conclusion these are very good types of projects and contracts to consider, especially in the C&I market. What's driving the commercial customer? So there are many things that are driving the commercial customer, but one of the main drivers right now is the environmental, social, and governance, the ESG model that's come out from an investor standpoint that says, from an investor perspective, I want to only invest in companies that have high or good ESG types of scores. And as you can see here, almost half of the Fortune 500 companies have greenhouse gas emission reduction requirements. To the right there, you can see that we're part of the Climate Disclosure Project, for example, the CDP. In each of these cases, there's 200 companies. They're making a real difference in how they're looking at and addressing climate change in terms of what they're doing. A lot of this is driving then what to do with the projects, and going down further, the desire to finance the project and the issue of the internal hurdle rates for corporations becomes a barrier or a friction point for doing these projects. With the energy as a service, we have a solution to that may be very attractive for some of the folks. And then finally, this need for off-balance sheet treatment, or effectively taking the project and not having it show up as part of a credit determination for that company, becomes a driver in some cases for how they, view or look at the projects. In all those cases, we have solutions, I believe, to those problems, and you'll hear more from Jesse and SparkFund about that in just a second. And then finally, I'll point out in the lower right-hand corner, we have a impact report that we are now on our second year of publishing. This is on our website, but it shows what our environmental impact is for what we do, and we use a count called carbon count as one of the methodologies to understand and derive what the benefit is of each of the projects we invest in over the course of each year. So what is commercial ESAs, or energy as a service, efficiency as a service? Well, these are really service contracts. At the end of the day, the customer wants 72 and sunny. I'm kind of making that tongue-in-cheek to some degree, but the customer wants an output and they want somebody else to do it because this may not be a core competency of that customer. So therefore, they want other companies to come in and provide those services, presumably not only install them, but also more importantly, even take care of them over a long period of time and finance them as a package. So it becomes a whole packaged idea here. So I won't belabor this point, but I thought I'd bring it up as a part of the process to try to bring together the thought that this is really a services type of a contract. Next is, and we didn't talk about this before, but one of the mechanisms that's available today for commercial building owners is CPACE financing, or commercial property assessed clean energy. This is available in many states. I think it's 35 states now. All jurisdictions don't have it, but it is winding its way through the U.S. at this point. But it is a very attractive way to finance because it is 100% financing of the projects. It's non-recourse to the owner, so there's no personal guarantees involved, which in many cases with a loan there can be and are personal guarantees. It's fixed rates up to 25 years. This is not a loan because it can't be accelerated, and there's no balloon payments associated with it. So it's a different type of contracting or financing structure for the customer. In many cases, when you have a multi-tenant office building or multi-tenant situation where we've done work, for example, with Simon Properties, the cost of the PACE can be administered back to your tenants as a part of the common area maintenance charge. So that makes it very attractive for the owner because there's no out-of-pocket expenses or costs associated with it. Owner keeps all the tax incentives. It could be off balance sheet, although we are not in any way an advisory or advocating to be an advisory in any of these cases. But it should be an off balance sheet treatment for these cases because it is a tax lien at the end of the day and is part of the operating expense. Very interesting way to go about it. I think we've talked about this in the past. This is gaining traction on both new construction as well as retrofit. So I wanted to point this out as one of the alternates to energy as a service that may be out there for customers to consider. And then finally, I want to talk just for a second about the public sector. So there is a notion, and we've done several of these projects with large school districts, for example, or municipalities like the city of Louisville, where there is a energy savings agreement that can be crafted up for the public sector customer. And in this case, what they're looking to get is a neutral credit rating. So if the contract is structured properly, where the savings pay for the cost, in other words, it's a notion called self-supporting with Moody's, for example, and it has a variability of the payments, so the payments are based on performance, then we can get generally speaking, the neutral credit rating impact and even preserve the borrowing capacity of the public sector customer. So it becomes a relatively potentially attractive way to go. It also has some other attributes that are interesting to talk about. One is low transaction costs, because the financing and the entire project are bundled into one procurement. It streamlines that procurement process for the municipality. And then finally, there's no real voter approval needed other than the project itself. It's one procurement. There's no need for a separate bond issuance vote of any sort or any delays associated with that. So if there's a need for speed, for example, this can be a very attractive way to go. Much more to swallow in this, but I wanted to give you at least a high-level view of what's possible in the public sector customer between what's would be considered a tax-exempt energy savings performance contract, and for example, the Iowa project I mentioned before, that's a concession agreement on scale of $1 billion. And then finally, I have an eye chart here, but I wanted to summarize some of the attributes. So along the left side here are key attributes related to each of the contract structures. And then going from left to right, I have the public sector guaranteed energy savings performance contracts, the commercial ESA or energy as a service, and then commercial PACE. To give you an idea of what the various attributes of these are from a contractual standpoint, and where things might stand in each of these cases. I don't want to belabor this, and we can go back to this from a Q&A standpoint, but I thought this would be very instructive for everybody to see as a series of these pieces of the puzzle that may be important for customers and how they fit into each one of these contract constructs. By the way, on the public sector ESA, if you go down the commercial ESA process, it is very much the same except for the second item down where it solves for split incentives. That's not applicable in a city or a school district, for example, but one that for the rest of the attributes is pretty much the same for a public sector energy savings agreement versus a commercial ESA. So with that, thank you very much. I appreciate the time and look forward to the questions at the end. Jeff?
Great. We'll swap over to Jesse now. We're all here. Jesse, are you there?
I am. Let me see. Show my screen, right? How's that?
We can see it. Yep, perfect.
Okay, great. All right. I'm just going to go ahead and throw out a disclaimer. I'm one of those people with 4 kids at home, at least through the end of April, so please just cut me a little slack on any background noise that you hear. They're doing their best over there on the other side of the house. All right, so I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for joining. I think some of you may have heard from a colleague of mine, Mike Dersko, a few months ago, and I'm happy to kind of follow in his footsteps here. I think I'm going to also kind of start from scratch. I'm not sure how much people already know about SparkFund, so I provide a little bit of overview material, and we're going to share the slides after. There's a testimonial right here in this button that you can click on later. It's like a 2-minute video that really, I think, shows the impact of this program, Energy as a Service, and what a platform solution can do for customers. It's from their perspective, and it's pretty inspiring. It's from a 6 through 12 public school here in Baltimore City. And so it's one of our, I think it makes us, it just reinforces the mission, right? These are kids in a city with a graduation rate of 75%. This school has a 95% graduation rate, and they care a lot about their facility. And we just made it a lot easier for them to be able to focus on the kids. And that's really what the platform does. Rob said 72 and sunny, and I love that, right? Customers, by and large, not all of them, right? They're definitely more sophisticated customers with super robust facility management teams and tools and data and optimization strategies and everything else. But by and large, 72 and sunny deliver me outcomes so that I can focus on my core business. And that's what the SparkFund platform is trying to enable. In the same way, actually, that we all used to own or work for companies that owned racks and racks of servers and had massive IT teams. And we did all the content and data management internally to our business. You know, there's just a massive migration over to Amazon Web Services and cloud computing. Many other platforms you can think of in your personal life as well have migrated toward subscriptions and sharing type platforms. And until recently, customers haven't had the option to outsource or subscribe to these building energy system functions. So SparkFund began the product journey by asking kind of that key question. What would happen if we could control and then optimize all the economic decisions around energy systems and assets? And then these lists of 6 bullets here are some of the outcomes we thought we could drive if as a company we were successful. So that our mission became to deliver lower cost, higher quality building infrastructure as a service. And I would add here, our founders, co-founders used to work for an EE administrative, sort of a program administration firm tied to utilities, and they experienced firsthand for about 10 years a very fragmented market, ecosystem, a lot of vendor fatigue from customers. There's, of course, the big 3 time capital risk constraints that prevented customers from getting projects done. And they decided that there had to be a better way to kind of keep all of that crazy behind the curtain and make it easy for customers to get their projects done. So they founded Spark Fund about 7 years ago with that mission. And to date, we have over 500 active subscriptions in the US, 43 states. I think we're in 44 actually right now, with 70 million in energy savings. And our primary investors, I would say we're sort of mid-stage startup. Our primary investors are the Energy Impact Partners, Southern Company, Constellation, and we have some big, we call them providers. They're licensed customers that white label the Spark Fund platform to enable energy as a service to all of their customers. Shell and Southern Company are our biggest 2, Alabama Power, Southstar Energy, and we have 3 others in the pipeline this year. So this kind of gets into what we do. First of all, what we believe. We do believe as a company, a very mission-focused company. We got 55, I used to say energy nerds, and people told me I should say energy experts. 55 energy experts back at headquarters whose core business and passion is about how to make this situation better. And we started with this insight of 60% of HVAC in the US was installed 30 years ago, with just over half of that having a regular HVAC maintenance program. And so the idea of an imminent failure, deferred maintenance, those sorts of challenges rose to the front of all the conversations we were having with customers. And this was a list after focus groups and just formal, informal conversations, quarterly business reviews, a lot from sales. There's just a ton of reasons why projects don't get done, why buildings are managed inefficiently, and really the operational costs associated with that. And so the founders defined an advantage. How could you do it better? What would it look like? What does that mean? And in order to solve for the problems on the left, the challenges on the left, so this is how we get the infrastructure that's needed into the facilities that need it without causing building owners, business owners, school and hospital operators to really have to focus on it so that they can focus their resources on their core business. I'm going to go through most of these in a little more detail and follow on slides, so I won't drain this one. The idea here is kind of look around the edges of the buildings. Those are all the technologies that we support today. But the main idea is that all businesses need light, cold air, hot air, resiliency in order to create a comfortable environment for them to do what they do best. And the Spark Fund platform is acting as a seamless extension of whatever internal team capability they have to deliver these energy infrastructure projects to minimize their cost and maximize reliability. And we do all of that for a straightforward, predictable monthly subscription payment and no upfront capital. And in a lot of cases, customers are handling many of these things today. They're running RFPs, they're selecting and evaluating technologies, they're onboarding vendors and managing vendors. They are bidding out O&M contracts. They're doing a lot of it today. They sort of have to. But there are always gaps and there are always inefficiencies. And there are always other things they would rather be doing with their time and those resources. So the platform approach is what we've been able, is really what's resonating, I think, is that you can use this Spark Fund platform to gap fill wherever you need to. So if you feel like you have a strong engineering team in the building, or a customer feels like they have a strong procurement team and run supply chain and get OEM discounts, right, then they can pick and choose in a modular fashion which capabilities they want to take advantage of on the platform. This is a list, and I would, in case some people are like lists better than visuals, I would add we're actually scoping very large chiller plant replacements, upgrades right now. We are scoping CHP projects, and then we've done full new construction. So we talk about electrical, not just lighting, but like the wiring out, behind the walls. So covered technologies is expanding. We add 1 or 2 more bullets to the list, it feels like, every 6 months. All right, and then these are some of the customers. People usually ask, what sectors, where is this resonating? Are there particular industries that are using it more than others? And we've done a lot of work with our marketing team to try to figure that out. And the answer is actually that it's resonating across all sectors. If you look at Church & Dwight, is one of the largest manufacturing companies in our country. MUFG is one of the largest financial services groups in the world. We have public and private universities. There's Shell gas stations. If you think about just physical size, from a gas station to a manufacturing plant, full healthcare facilities, K through 12 schools, and others in here. Hotels are another big one. Assisted living group. Affinity is the 11th largest assisted living chain in the U.S. So there isn't a particular segment. It's more about whether or not customers are open to and feel the need for an as-a-service solution. If they're already outsourcing something today, then they're more likely to outsource energy infrastructure management to us. And it helps if they're in some sort of growth mode where they are multi-facility, multi-location business and they want to run through upgrades and either don't have capital or don't want to use their own capital to manage those upgrades. So we've learned that the sector it doesn't matter. We've seen success and we've seen failure really across all these sectors. I have a couple slides that just kind of show how we're doing some of the work. So we say we want to deliver better quality service and lower cost of service. So and for every proposal we develop for a customer, for a building, it's essentially a business case. And I have a few examples. If we don't have time, they'll be in the deck. But for every customer, we'll show, of course, the energy savings estimate. We'll show an OpEx savings estimate, but we'll show them the cost of sort of the status quo. Here's what it will look like if you do nothing for the next 10 years. Here's what we think it will look like if you self-finance. Here's what we think it will look like if you use subscription with a functional guarantee. And we invite, we're completely transparent. We show the build up, we show our assumptions, and we develop that business case sort of collaboratively so that it's an easy decision to make. Like I said, I'll show a few examples in use cases, case studies after this section here, but these 2 slides are the how. So I don't want to read every word on the slide, but there are some big ways that we save money for the majority of our customers. Like I said, not all of them need all of these services. They really can pick and choose the ones that they find valuable. But we have negotiated discounted pricing with OEMs, so we can get 20% on straight procurement. We have optimization services with retro commissioning partners and controls that save the 7 to 15%. Emergency repair avoidance is another one. If you just think about in your own home when your AC quits in the summer and you have to call someone to come in and fix it and then replace it, you're paying a 20% premium, easy. So we try not to do that. We procure in the shoulder seasons and the off seasons. We procure in bulk, and we are proactively monitoring the systems in our portfolio so that we can do our best to avoid emergency repairs. So just that other slide I promised. So in terms of system reliability, one of the main things we're doing is trying to extend the equipment life for customers. I think one of the main things that makes us different from your traditional ESCO model is that we don't necessarily need a project. So a customer, we actually, is that true? Yes. We did a recent one, another public school, where on a $1 million contract, the only new piece, I should say, on a $750,000 HVAC contract, the only new piece of equipment they needed was a $22,000 controller. The rest was ongoing services, O&M across the 10-year period, active monitoring, controls, and functional guarantees. And we can assume responsibility, assume the risk for all that equipment. We guarantee it works for them. If ever it doesn't work, we have contractual cure periods. If we don't meet those cure periods, payment can go to zero. They don't pay us if it doesn't work. So if you think about a school with they always have budget cuts. There's always reduced staff. Staff are always multitasked and overworked. And we just took, it was like 3 people's part-time job to take care of this brand new facility, and now they have an easy button. They outsource the whole thing. They get their building recommissioned. All systems are running smoothly. We start up quarterly maintenance. We're proactively monitoring it. And for that school, for example, when the orders for COVID-19 started to shut down schools, we contact the school. We discuss adjusting set points and schedules for them, and we do that remotely so that the school then saves on their energy bills and is set for low occupancy for the next month or however long this is going to take. So there's a lot of great work we can do. Think of infrastructure as a service to us means that we deliver outcomes. You just tell us, and we put it in our contracts, if you want so many lumens, you want set points plus or minus 2 degrees, you want to set an SLA around power draw. We deliver the outcomes and we guarantee the outcomes, and then the equipment maintenance becomes our responsibility, and we have aligned incentives to make sure that the equipment can deliver that on that functional guarantee. So this is an overview of how it will work, and then I think I'll wrap and just show you a couple of case studies. This is the process. It looks a lot like the ESCO process. In terms of discovery, data collection, construction grade audits, you get to solutions and contracts, and then we work with the national install team. We get customer sign off, and then we start that ongoing maintenance and optimization. And like I said, sometimes there's no install. We just take over responsibility for the equipment. In most cases, there's an installation, and we use partners like Hannon actually, who back our capital, who provide the capital for us and the facilities on the back end. This is one of the case studies. I think I have a few more minutes. I was timing myself. Does that sound right? Let's see.
Yeah, we can give you a couple more minutes.
I'm going to give you. I'll give you 2 of these case studies as a walkthrough. Then you guys can look through the others on your own. And if we have a library of them, if you'd like a particular sector, but for every customer, we'll produce this graph on the lower right, which is, and this is often how we whiteboard in the room with customers to help them understand their current costs. So they map out, this is real data in the red line. If they were to finance it on their own, if they were to self-perform or RFP out for maintenance and repairs, emergency repairs, that's the red line, right? And the area under the curve of the red line, that's their total payment over, in this case, 7 years. What we produce in our business case then is the area under the curve of that blue line is a fixed monthly payment for 7 years, and they never make, there's no upfront capital, they never make any sort of T&M repair request or repair costs, there's no emergency fees, no adjustments, no matter what happens to the equipment. So if an air handling unit breaks, SparkFund replaces it, their monthly payment never changes, right? We're delivering outcomes. So in every case, as long as the area under the blue line is less than the area under the red line, it's a win. And if it's not, like we high five that customer and we say, you're doing a great job, keep it up, right? You don't need us. But here, this is an example that included just a lot of different technologies there in the upper left, 254 systems with a lot of different, mostly HVAC, but lots of things. And this is the table I mentioned that we can show a customer for their building. So if they just did an upfront purchase versus they did an upfront purchase plus maintenance, plus then if you wanted to finance it with us, so just straight traditional banking, and then guarantee of function, that's the definition for us of subscription. If you turn over responsibility to SparkFund, we guarantee it works, and there is a premium for that. They pay for that. That's the subscription price. And then if they want guaranteed savings, we add in the cost of M&D. And so we'll do this workup for customers to let them make a decision, and there's a whole bunch of value content that comes before and after to show kind of what's included in each of these bundles. But the main idea here is not to understand all the numbers in the slide so much as to understand the flexibility of the platform. Some customers want off-balance sheet financing. They want us to own the asset so it's off their books. They get a service payment. They get the new asset. It preserves their capacity. So some just want, as close to straight financing as possible. Some, like the school I mentioned, want to completely outsource responsibility for those systems and have us guarantee that the systems will work. So the flexibility here, this sort of platform solution, lets one customer upgrade a lighting system 1 year, an HVAC system another year, new chiller plant 5 years from now. It's kind of as they need it. There's already a master agreement in place, and we just slot in a new statement of work underneath for that new project. So we can become their lifetime energy infrastructure partner. Here's one last case study just to show you maybe what I'll do instead of walk through it is just share that we have a Church and Dwight example in here. These are all real numbers of contracts that have signed. I gave you a Concord University with results and savings, and then a regional medical center, just to share that this was brand new construction for a medical center that asked us to cover the full MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing line in those plans, and that's what we did. We assume responsibility for that, and we just partner with the GC to slot into their work schedule, and they use our dollars to pay for those items. So
okay, Jesse, we're going to need to move over.
I'll end there. Yep, go ahead.
Thanks.
Perfect.
All right, so thanks so much, Jesse. Sorry, in terms of time, we want to make sure Rob's got plenty of time to speak. We will be going a few minutes over to make sure he's got enough time to get through his presentation, since there's a good bit to it. But we're going to turn things over to Rob right now. Rob, are you here?
Yes, can you see my slides?
Making you presenter right now.
Okay, can you see my slides now?
Yeah.
Great. Hi, I'm Rob Harmon. I'll jump right into this. I'm the executive director of the Meets Accelerator Coalition. We're focused on creating a transaction structure around energy efficiency that will get us deep into buildings, much longer term paybacks, much greater savings. We've been working on this for quite some time. It's running in Seattle now. We put a pilot together there, and now the utility there is expanding the pilot as we speak. So I'm just going to walk you through how this transaction structure works and give you a quick review of what it means for the financial aspect of projects. So hold on, here we go. So when we looked at deep energy efficiency in buildings, what we determined was that it was currently not scalable for two fundamental reasons. One is that it undermines the utility business model, and the second is that split incentives destroy the economics on the building owner side. This is particularly true, of course, in the commercial space. So here's an old slide of the California power mix showing how much of the load is met with energy efficiency. I guess I could update that slide. Here's a similar slide for the Pacific Northwest, as you can see, meeting load growth with efficiency. So that all looks good if we like energy efficiency. But if you're a utility, all of that represents red ink. Of course, utilities, for the most part, earn on investments like generation. So traditional energy efficiency is negative sales for them. It's lost revenue, and it's lost opportunity for investment. This is a graph of what that does over time to the utilities bond ratings, which is what the CEOs pay a great deal of attention to. I won't belabor this, but essentially Wall Street and other investment outfits are concerned about the utility loss of unit sales. So the utility economics result is that they're going to resist energy efficiency, particularly at depth. And it can't really scale for them without changes to energy efficiency policy. So that's the utility side. And I think that's why we're seeing that utilities only do the amount of energy efficiency that they're required to by regulation. It's not a resource for them. On the building owner economics side, as we all know, building owners are asked to invest and the tenants keep the savings in non-owner occupied buildings. The result in general is short-term paybacks if you get any activity at all. This is a graph of how we view split incentives. So if you look at this graph, the blue area is the entire savings over a 30-year time span. The vertical axis is the percent of savings at commissioning. So you would think that if you commissioned a really great energy efficiency project, you would maintain that energy efficiency over the life of the project. That's not the case. And most of the time what we see is this, and that's because people stop paying attention to the energy efficiency after the measures have been installed. If you stop thinking about that as energy savings and you start thinking about it as dollar savings, which of course is what drives all of this, and you want to see what savings is available to the investor in these projects, if you have a split incentive problem, the amount of money available to the investor is zero because all the savings flow to the tenants. So you get the initial hit of utility incentives, and then the cash flows after that are all a matter of whether or not you can negotiate something with the building owner who isn't getting the savings either. So this is the fundamental problem we've seen for decades now in the commercial space, where projects simply don't happen because the investors are asked to make the investment and the tenants get the savings. Even in owner-occupied buildings, this is the graph on the residential side, the average homeowner owns their home for 5 years, so it shouldn't surprise us that on average the paybacks they look for are 2.5 years. That would be the average, that the amount the average person is going to live in their home when you approach them and ask them to do a retrofit. On the commercial side, the average ownership of a commercial building is about 9 years, so it shouldn't surprise us that in buildings where anything at all is done, the average payback is 4.6 years. So those are rational economic decisions because investors want to receive their money back before they no longer can receive the money. So this is the problem, fundamental problem with split incentives. MEETS, the metered energy efficiency transaction structure, was designed to capture all of that savings and turn it into cash flows in the same way you would at a wind farm. You wouldn't expect any of these issues at a wind farm or a utility integrated solar array in the desert. Those projects are all transacting in a very, very different way than efficiency is. So what we determined is if we want to get deep in buildings, we have to make energy efficiency the equivalent of generation, which means you need to meter it efficiently and accurately and transparently over long periods of time. And then you need to buy it and sell it just like energy. That's what MEETS is. We do that with a, sorry for the fuzzy diagram, a dynamic baseline meter. The coalition is technology neutral. This is a graph of the meter that's being used at the Bullitt Center in Seattle. The red line is a baseline derived from prior use. The continuation of the red line post retrofit is the calibrated, normalized native load, or how the building would perform if it had not been updated. And the purple area is the efficiency, which is the difference, of course, between how the building would have performed, the red line, and the amount of energy the building actually consumes, the green line. So that's what we're calling metered energy efficiency. We've now convinced Seattle City Lake to actually call it efficiency energy because it's a resource. By the way, that meter was accurate within 1% during the pilot. This is an energy efficiency statement. You can see that adjusted baseline energy, the oval to the left. That's that red line from the prior graph. Minus the utility meter is the kilowatt hour yield of the efficiency. So you'll note that now we have a yield in units. And once we have units, we can transact in the same way we transact on any other form of unit, a solar array in the desert or on the roof of a Walmart, etc. So that's where the transaction structure comes into place. So MEETS is a structure. It is not a form of incentive. It's designed to use the savings value that is currently given away to tenants, the split incentive problem. That savings value is often worth 4 to 20 times the incentive value. So under MEETS, as I said, the energy efficiency is metered against a dynamic baseline. So that meter adjusts for both routine and non-routine changes to the building on an all fuels basis. Here's the trick. That energy efficiency is sold not to the building owner, but to the utility under a long-term power purchase agreement, just like a wind farm. The utility then takes that same energy efficiency reading from the meter and puts it on the building owner's energy bill. It appears on the common area section of that bill in energy units at retail rates, which is what eliminates the split incentive. The building is paying for delivered energy efficiency on its utility energy bill. And the building owner can then allocate the costs in that building for that energy bill in the same way they do now. There's no change. It's just the energy bill, which is what it would have been had the building not been upgraded. I'm going to walk you through this graphically. So we replace the ESCO with an energy tenant. They're called that because they actually take on a tenancy agreement in the building. They have a long-term rental agreement to harvest and sell the metered energy efficiency. They have that agreement with the building owner. They then pay for and maintain the improvements. They pay the building owner rent as any other tenant would for occupying the building and harvesting the efficiency. The building owner has a more comfortable and valuable building at no cost. All they need to do is continue to pay the energy bill, which includes the efficiency energy. The tenants have a more comfortable and highly productive building for free. All they need to do is continue to pay the energy bill, which is what it would have been without the upgrade. The utility, because they're now selling efficiency units, maintains unit sales, so they do not have the death spiral aspect of eroding unit sales, and they maintain their gross revenues. They read the meter, just like they do on any other meter, and they pay under a long-term PPA for the efficiency being delivered. The energy tenant then uses that to repay the capital provider, just like a wind farm. I'll give you a quick look at the economics of this. So this is the Bullitt Center in Seattle. Seattle at the time of this contract had very low energy prices at about 6 cents. The Bullitt Center would have received an $84,000 upfront incentive for the work that was done in that building, which was not very appealing. The 20-year PPA they signed gave them a net present value of $740,000. So that's the way they thought about the value of this versus a traditional energy efficiency package. If you move the Bullitt Center to a market with 15-cent energy, which we have a lot of in the country, you would probably get about the same incentive, but your PPA would be worth $1.6 million. So that's a no-brainer if you're trying to figure out whether or not you're going to upgrade a building. Here's a list of the benefits, and this is very close to my last slide. So for the utility, you now, because you're dealing with metered efficiency that you can target, you have a new load management resource that's location specific and reliable. Because it's metered, you're only paying for units you receive, and we believe there's a rate-basable earnings opportunity there. You have no gross revenue loss, and you have no loss of unit sales. If you're a building owner, you've got a 20 or 30-year tenant in your building who's paying you rent and maintaining all the systems for you. You have this new revenue stream, which increases your net operating income. You don't use your own capital, and you don't have to be in the energy business. For investors, what they're looking at is finance based on a utility PPA, which is a very strong counterparty and a very known, well understood instrument. So we'll get lower and rated payment risk out of that, and that scales through aggregation. We get all the normal societal benefits we would get, but you just get more of them because you're operating more at depth. So in the interest of time, I'm going to stop there. Thanks for the time.
Thank you so much, Rob. Really appreciate that, and then thank you to all of our speakers. We do have a few questions here we want to ask for all of our speakers here. The first one comes from Jeff, one of our co-chairs. His first question is: are there examples of using energy as a service model for affordable multifamily projects as a means of avoiding the complicated capital stack that exists in most affordable multifamily buildings?
Hey, this is Jessie Scavone from SparkFund. I can take the first shot at that. I think yes, the answer is yes, we want to do that. We haven't yet. So we have an example for you of a project in flight, and I'd be happy to share some anonymized details, but we've actually built a calculator for affordable multifamily housing developer to use, so that on various projects, that team can adjust just a few variables like number of units, parking spots, I forget some of the others, but you can make some small adjustments and it'll spit out what that subscription price would be. And so a developer can then look at that and say, given, again, we're just looking at the MEP line item in those affordable housing project budgets. So the mechanical, electrical work, is the capital expense there in that stack for those components, plus what they have budgeted for the operational component, right, to maintain that equipment for the next 5, 7, or 10 years. If they add those two things together, is it worth the trade-off? You can carve that piece of the capital stack out, convert it to OpEx, and is the monthly payment with SparkFund worth it? And that calculator exists today, and we are that's the thing I could share with you just to put in front. We'd love to get it in front of other developers of multifamily housing units to see how helpful it is and how much it actually does relieve some of the sort of high mezzanine, the high mezzanine debt rates that they're seeing there for that stack. If we can replace that, that's where we think we can add value.
Just to put this is Bob from Hannah Armstrong. There is a program through Freddie Mac and Fannie that has a green bond issuance for upgrading multifamily housing, which includes, by the way, low income and moderate income housing. So there is a program in place. We're financing some of that on the back end, but there is a recognition that this is a growing opportunity and issue to address. And I think at least in the Fannie and Freddie world, they're looking at this as a green opportunity as well.
Yeah, this is Rob Harmon. I'll just add to that we think there's a lot of opportunity with MEETS on multifamily, and there's some very interesting aspects to low-income multifamily, which we don't have time to get into on the call, which seems to me to make MEETS a particularly appealing approach from low-income multifamily. So I'm happy to talk to folks offline about that if they'd like to do that.
Hey, Sam, this is Dan. I could throw in another question if you're looking for that. Sam?
Oh, yep. Sorry, Dan, I was on mute for a second. I've got one here for from Rod, actually, for all the speakers, and then we can go for you if that's okay.
Yeah.
So a question for all three of you really is with energy as a service or energy subscription agreements or other mechanisms, do they include time valuation of energy and energy savings by including such things as shifting demand to take advantage of time of use rates, or participate in demand response, or participate in any kind of grid interactive service, such as sending some power back to the grid for ancillary service? If not, is this a growing opportunity to consider, and what policy and regulatory changes may be needed to facilitate it?
This is Rob. I'll take that. Yes, that you can easily use the transaction structure with MEETS to do anything behind the meter. It really just depends on whether you want to pay different amounts for those services. You might pay differently for DG than you might for efficiency, given the load following characteristics. But our feeling about it is that what we need to do is to treat everything behind the meter transactionally the same way we treat things in front of the meter. in order to reach scale. In terms of regulatory issues, they're myriad and they're in every state. At some point, what we need to do is to get regulators to agree en masse that efficiency is indeed energy. We've been talking about that for a very long time, but we don't really regulate it like it is. And I think now that the world has moved on from deemed savings to metered savings, that we should move the regulatory needle there as well.
Great.
This is Jessie. I can add, we do have a few customers who have integrated DR into subscription. So I guess I would say two things. One is the primary purpose of the SparkFund model is to deliver system function, and we guarantee function, which makes us a little different than traditional energy savings guarantees. That's sometimes confusing, but if you think about our chief product officer wrote some of the IPMVP methodology guidance, and so he's on board with essentially we're guaranteeing savings, but in our contracts we guarantee function. And so we say if we guarantee the wattage of that light bulb, right, but we don't argue with you about how many hours it's burning or what your utility rate is or what your bill is going to be, we guarantee that the wattage is the more efficient wattage. And so we try to get customers focused on those outcomes of the lights working, the cool air, the warm air when you need it. And then the second thing I was going to say is for DR, we have customers who do have backup generation assets that SparkFund's purchased, and our partner, actually, the OEM, forecast does the calculation, the analysis to determine how much can be bid into PJM or into the market, and then we reduce the subscription price for the customer based on that model. So the customer doesn't see the fluctuation in monthly payments, but they see a reduced fixed subscription payment based on the fact that they're allowing their assets to be used in the market.
And I guess I'll end up with a financing point here that going back to a four-letter word called risk. How much risk is someone taking on with utilization risk, things like escalation risk of utility prices? Am I taking any commodity price risk on this project over time, irrespective of whether it's a small behind-the-meter demand-side management program or one that might be the size and scale of a University of Iowa, for example, which includes generation capacity on campus, demand capacity on campus within the buildings, and then the transmission distribution structure that connects all those things together on a campus. So this question is one of risk and would have to be looked at on a project-by-project basis on who is wearing that risk and how much is manifesting itself for the financing portion of the deal.
Great, thank you. And then Dan, I know you had a question for our speakers.
Sure, I was going to pick on Rob a little bit. Just in Rob, in 2 minutes, could you tell us in terms of what you envision as next steps in terms of scaling meets and scaling the model?
Sure. Seattle City Light has rolled out its expansion. We expect projects to come across the finish line on March 31st, which is a few days from now. I was just on the phone with them yesterday, so that's all going well. We know there are buildings lining up to do that. It's a very short timeline, so I don't expect we're going to get more than half a dozen of them. But it would not surprise me if Seattle City Light created a second deadline given the coronavirus issues. There's a lot of activity going on in Hawaii right now around this. There's a lot of activity going on in New York around this. There's activity in Ohio going on around this. So I think that what's happened up till now is that everybody's been waiting to see what the utility that had already done this was going to do next. And now that City Light is rolling it out and building owners are adopting it, I think we'll see much more rapid uptake. The kicking the tires phase is kind of over.
Fantastic, thank you.
Great. So I think we're about out of time here, and so I'll adjourn things if that's okay, Dan. Just a couple things to mention here. First of all, thanks everybody for your flexibility today. Apologies for the delay in the start. Just some technical difficulties with the system since we're in a little bit of a different different mind space working from home here. If you do have additional questions, I know as I still see some hands raised and there are some questions, please email me. I've left my email in the chat bubble. So that's skramer@naseo.org, and I will happily forward those questions onto our speakers. Finally, we will be uploading the slides to the NASEO website at the link we specified earlier. So if you'd like to take a look at the slides, I know, Rob, you have some supplemental slides as well. I think everybody has some supplemental slides. We'll take care of that, and please make sure to review those once they're up on the NASEO website. They should be up, within a day or so. So again, thank you everybody for being on the call. Thank you so much for all of our speakers who were able to talk about this emerging finance mechanism and all the useful applications it can have. And please, again, please reach out to us with additional questions that we can help get answered for you. So that way we're making sure that we're on top of everything. Thank you everybody, and have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks.